last action of the day. Well done, everyone, for making it through. We won't do 40 minutes, but we'll do some. Technically, the title of the panel is "How NFTs Are Revolutionizing Gaming: A Deep Dive into the Future of Play." I don't think we need to necessarily restrict ourselves to that, so we can sort of talk about what we want to. Shall we stop it? It's bad for me to sit next to me. Okay, let's start. Orel, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a bit about what you're doing in the space?
My name is Orel. I'm one of the co-founders of OviO. And what we've built is a way to make Web3 games much more available for the traditional gamers to interact with. So when you come to OviO, you just play games. You don't know if it's a Web3 game, if it's a Web2 game, what kind of game it is. And that's it. Very simple.
Wait. Come on.
I'm Jonty, video games lawyer, been in the industry for over 15 years, 13 of which were at EA. Now at a law firm, we have clients who, of all shapes and sizes and all types of game, including NFT, Web3 games. And when I was at EA, I was involved in some of their initial projects, trying to get into the NFT space. Never saw the light of day for various reasons, but certainly an interesting experience.
There's an interesting off-record discussion about how close EA got to some blockchain games, but we won't have that on this panel.
Yes.
I think people will be surprised how close they did get.
Very close.
I'm sure not just EA. I'm sure similar conversations were being had. Anyway.
I don't think this works. Hello. My name's Tony. Nice to meet you. Thank you. I run a company called Reality Plus that focus on Web3 games. Started in 2017. We now work with worldwide brands, including the BBC, ITV, FIFA, Tour de France, and we're banging it out the park.
Okay. You have to switch the mic on. So it works, Tony. So we have some general questions, but I thought within the realms of professionalism that Jonty can, there's probably things he can and can't say in terms of, you're not giving legal advice to people. Lawyers always say that sort of stuff. But I think it is interesting, given we've had stuff around SEC and what's sort of roughly about securities, or that's part of specific cases about specific companies. But it just in general, it might be a good opportunity for you to talk a little bit about sort of where do you think we are in sort of the framework of digital assets and the law. Obviously, it's different in different countries. Is the situation getting better? Is it getting worse? What sort of headline stuff could you sort of, because we all have opinions on stuff, but we are not trained in law, so our opinions might be right, might not be, but the stuff you say we can treat a bit more seriously.
I don't think I think law is all about grey areas. That's where we come in. I think, so my personal take on NFTs and, this space is, you said yourself, it's digital assets. I think if you are selling a digital asset using an NFT, whether you own the rights in that digital asset or not, that's true whether you're using an NFT to sell that asset or not. Because, I'm not a techie, but an NFT at the end of the day is, and I know I'm very much simplifying it, but it's a method of selling that asset. So yes, you've got all of the issues around, are they securities or commodities, etc., which the SEC are looking into at the moment. Very interesting space. It's the law is trying to catch up with all of this, but I think that's a constant challenge in the games industry. In all my 15 years, I've that's one of the reasons why I like being a video games lawyer, is that actually it pushes the boundaries and it challenges the norm. It's true of AI as well at the moment. Everybody's scrambling, trying to catch up a bit. So that's my take at high level. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
and I think it's interesting as well. We've had, similar things around.
Come up, Greg. Front row.
Similar things. I'm sure this came up at EA. Sort of about gacha legislation, which in Belgium has been banned for like 5 years now. It's
exactly.
And it's sort of people like going, well, some people are like, this is definitely gambling, and some people are like, well, we should change our gambling laws because it is gambling, which is very similar to like these are security laws, and we're going to change our laws to make this thing that doesn't obviously seem like a security. You know, I mean, the law is always butting games monetization and law is always a bit of a grey area.
I think the games industry has had a very lucky position for a long time. The games industry is largely self-regulated, and I think the loot box kerfuffle is almost the beginnings of regulators starting to look at the games industry. As the industry gets bigger, regulators are definitely starting to look at the games industry a lot more. I was on a panel previously with the ex-head of the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority in the UK, and he was painting the games industry out to be just evil, and they're there to, you know, steal money from kids, etc. And I think that it's an interesting time because all of these new things, I think it gives them the opportunity to come in and try and regulate. That could be challenging for the industry given what they're used to. I think the other side of it, though, is that the regulators don't really understand the space. And I mean, even I did football licensing at EA. When we were negotiating deals with sports leagues, then they didn't understand NFTs. And so, you know, there are various aspects we were looking at, and it was quite challenging on that side. But then you've got regulators who really don't understand it, and you know, that's where they need to consult with industry, etc.
And I think, sorry, I'll just go on this legal thing for a bit, and I'll let you in. But I think it is interesting that I think the other thing that's happening is maybe on the outside, we sort of see people like the SEC and the CMA as maybe sometimes we see them as being slightly more powerful than they actually are. So they can obviously, they have the sort of legal right to sort of rewrite laws or give guidance or something like that, but that doesn't mean that stuff comes through. And I guess in the UK, the CMA, nothing to do with blockchain, you know, basically said you know, Microsoft can't buy Activision Blizzard, and sort of everyone else in the world has gone, well, can the UK really stop that? I mean, they've made themselves look a little bit silly. I'm not saying, I don't know about that case, but you know, they've made themselves, they're a tall poppy in that field, where everyone else in the world has sort of said, yes, the Americans are thinking about it, and the UK is the ones who've said, no, you can't do that. And,
I could talk to you for a long time about the CMA, and I think there's various political reasons why they're trying to... the CMA are getting a lot more power at the moment. They've come under a lot of criticism where they allowed things like Facebook or Meta to purchase Instagram and other companies, and I think there's a bit of a reaction to that. They're being given more powers, and they're trying to exercise it. The reality, in my opinion, is if you speak to a lot of the people in the games industry, most of the people don't care about Activision getting acquired by Microsoft. Interestingly, with the SEC, I'm not an American securities lawyer, but I was talking to one very recently, and I was talking to him about the securities issue, and his advice, don't fuck with the SEC. And that was it. So, yeah, interesting take.
Okay. You're desperate to come in on this.
Yeah, I come from the traditional financing system. I used to work as an investment banker. I used to work in the exchange, in the stock exchange market. So I kind of understand why the SEC is looking at blockchain and crypto the same way. But I think they are missing the whole idea. You are not the Web3 games or blockchain games do not care about the blockchain. They do not care about the anonymity, the things that the Security and Exchange Committee is trying to eliminate because they try to regulate, and gamers just trying to or willing to do whatever it takes to play great games. So if you are a game developer and you want to comply with all the rules and legislations that the SEC is required of you, then just create a great game, and the rest will follow because...
but it's not quite that easy, is it? I mean,
it's that easy. The SEC regulates tokens if it was like a security because you raise funds using those tokens. So if you would raise funds using, let's say, equity, like every normal company does, then you could still create your own Web3 game and publish it on the United States. You don't care about the anonymity and that aspect.
I mean, I guess to be fair, if you look at the trajectory of crypto in general since sort of 2021, you know, the SEC and people like that, while they may be sort of regulatory sort of creep, and they've been given, these organisations have power, so they feel they have to use it. Fundamentally, what they are trying to do is that it's sort of it's there to protect consumers, from bad agents. So sort of fundamentally, that's what these organisations exist for. So that's not a bad thing. The fact that we think they might be using their power in a slightly dubious way at this sort of current situation, because a lot of the bad actors aren't there anymore.
You forgot the politics. You forgot the politics.
Yeah.
Everything is run on politics, especially in the United States. I think they are missing the 2023 train, but it would be inevitable for them to acknowledge that Web3 is here to stay Web3, and you must regulate it. And I think 2024 would be a game changer for the United States, because they realize that they are missing the train. The United States and the United Kingdom and Asia, they're all figured out. They're trying to regulate everything. And the United States will follow. They have no choice.
I do think, in terms of regulation around NFTs, etc., I think, so my opinion on the NFT landscape so far, obviously we had the big bubble that burst, and I think there are a lot of NFTs that were being sold for obscene amounts of money, and people thought they were going to get rich quick. That's why you've got the SEC looking at it going, well, is it an investment? My personal opinion is that going forwards, I think actually NFTs will become more of a utility within a game. And I think, from what I do understand about the SEC and how they test stuff, I actually think as we move, I believe we're going to move away from that investment style NFT to a utility style NFT. I think actually the SEC will realize that actually no, the NFTs we're going to see in games don't need regulating in that way. Obviously, there are lots of different NFTs around the world. You've got Dapper Labs, I think it is, who are being investigated at the moment around their collectibles. It's a moment from a game, and that is where their concern is. But as I say, I think the use in games that I foresee, I don't think it will get caught.
No, and I think the other interesting thing is the industry was sort of already moving away from those, what we might now consider sort of sharp practices, which may have been outright scams or may have just been sort of everyone else is doing it, why wouldn't I do it? I think a lot of the industry has moved, people aren't doing ICOs now, partly because they don't work and partly because it's seen as wrong. And clearly now people are launching games without tokens and then adding tokens in, or launching their in-app marketplace using stable coins, and then we'll get we'll build up the economy, see how it works, and then we can launch a utility coin. And a lot of the tokenomics now is very much about this is purely designed to be a utility. We are locking some aspects of it down that we wouldn't have done before. The price might be volatile up and down because it's on a marketplace, but clearly there's no reason for this to be a speculative asset in the way that we've seen in the past. So I think maybe hopefully we're sort of the regulation is sort of rubber stamping some of the stuff we've as an industry sort of dealt with, hopefully, but still can be quite painful. Anyway, okay, let's move on from law a little bit. Tony Pearce has been remarkably quiet. So in your talk, it's sort of interesting. You guys doing a whole bunch of different stuff, but quite a lot now. You're focused on the sandbox. So sandbox, we've known Sebastian and Arthur. It's Arthur, isn't it? Arthur Madrid. For a long time in the mobile game space, and now in the Web3 space, taking them a long time to build that situation up. But as someone who sort of knows them well and is now building in there, how do you see that? Because I think I've always been very interested in the sandbox as I always sort of see it as my first metaverse. It's sort of it has that sort of slight cuteness. It's not trying to be like, wow, I'm a metaverse, but it has some of those elements. It has Minecraft on the blockchain. Is it more than just you get some IP and stick it in there and see what happens? Or, can you see it being a bit of a...
I think what the sandbox have done better than anyone else, and I'm not saying the sandbox is going to win at all. I think they've attracted the better brands to go and buy land. And I look at these things as a theme park. Why would I go to Thorpe Park as opposed to Chessington? Because Thorpe Park's got better rides. Yeah, okay,
so
why would I go to Disneyland as opposed to Universal? Because Disneyland's got better rides. I think the sandbox will have, because of the IP that's bought land, will have better applications and experiences for people to use. Now, whether they turn out to be good experiences, that's down to companies like us, right? To make them fun and to attract people in and to stay and engage, and that's how we earn money, by selling NFTs in the experiences like Thunderbirds in the sandbox. Now, we're also talking to Decentraland, and I think there was one point, I think all the Web3 metaverses got together and went, let's make this whole thing interoperable. And we were talking to Decentraland the other week about, if you bought something in the sandbox, how easy is it to take it into Decentraland? And actually, it's because they're completely different graphics, right? You couldn't be more opposite, right? And yet, but they're both Web3. So it is possible, but it will look completely different, and it will go sandbox to Decentraland, and it will look not as nice as if you were directly in Decentraland, but you can't do Decentraland to sandbox, which I didn't know until the other week. And that's Decentraland telling us. So that interoperability is still not there, but I think that's way off anyway. But back to your point, I think it's down to developers to make the experience fun. They've got the right brands. We're here to help them out on that. And you know, it's still not even open, right? This is the thing. It officially opens in Q4 this year. So we're only seeing the things that we've built open up for 2-week experiments, basically. So the sandbox basically go, right, you've got 2 weeks, we're going to advertise you on the website, and then we'll close it down, and they're getting all their data and the bugs and the feedback from that. And Thunderbirds had 21,000 people go into Tracy Island, and that was the best of the 10 that they promoted. So there's an ideal of numbers. It is tiny in the scale of games, right? But they were engaged. They stayed there for over an hour, though. That was the best figure that came out. So once you're in it and you're walking around and it's fun, people were there for an hour, and that's a long time in a day. So I who knows? I've honestly anyone that puts money on which one's going to win out, I don't know. But I think the sandbox has a better future.
After that hour, did they go back to it again?
Yeah, they have returning users. Yeah, because the data's actually really good, what you can get from the sandbox. So returning users, new users, how many NFTs were sold. And we did make revenue from it. It wasn't a lot, but we did make sales. I don't know if you saw the video, but we had a Lady Penelope's car. You saw it quickly. Anyway, that was a one-of-one NFT for 5,000, and that sold. Yeah, so there's obviously a massive Thunderbirds fan that wanted it. So there are sales there, right? It just, it's going to be interesting.
Those are sales like piece of art.
Yeah.
It's not fit to the masses. This is, I think that's the gap that need to be closed or need to be gapped between the traditional gaming atmosphere or ecosystem and the Web3 ecosystem. The Web3 kind of became a closed ecosystem for the rich. I'm sorry to say that. Those who were first to obtain those NFTs or obtain those crypto tokens, and the rest of us remain outside and just wait, it's a Ponzi, it's a bubble. Let's wait for that to explode like now. And still, we don't see the masses jump into the Web3 atmosphere.
You're talking about metaverse or talking about blockchain games?
I'm not talking about metaverse because
right.
I don't know what some metaverse is. I'm talking about the games.
Games, okay. I come from traditional video games. I'm a big fan of bringing big IP in as opposed to starting from scratch and doing a native game. And I have done native games before. In fact, our first Reality Clash, our first Web3 game wasn't branded. It was our own game. It's incredibly hard to have a successful native game because you've got to do a lot of marketing, and it's got to be a lot of... It's just much harder than sticking FIFA on it or Doctor Who on it. There's approval processes and the game has to be good, but that's going to give me millions of users. And the Doctor Who trading card game, we've minted 2 million cards. That's not bad in a small market, right? So it's coming. It's just not there yet. And I have full belief that in the next 2 or 3 years, there will be a game out there that is on par with a Web2 game. And I kind of like what's happening now with the app stores. I kind of like the Web2, Web3 hybrid.
Yeah, we've already managed to make it seamless. What I'm trying to maybe to explain or to present is that you don't have to develop a game to call it a blockchain game or Web3 game. What what I believe is that, first of all, create a game and use the blockchain and tokens and the NFTs like an add-on. So if like a small percentage of the 3.4 billion players on mobile choose to interact with that, that should be sufficient and great. Yeah. But you shouldn't be developed for only those users.
No, we don't mention NFT or blockchain on any of our products. The trading card game, .21, we call it digital collectibles that you own. And by the way, you can trade them on this website in our marketplace. And you can buy the packs with PayPal, credit cards, or crypto. Right, so
still need a wallet, right?
No. No,
you don't have a wallet?
No, we don't have any MetaMask. No, awesome. Literally, you sign up with an email address, password. We create you a wallet, but you don't know as the user. It's your account, and the NFTs sit in your account. If you want to export them, that's the only time that you would need some kind of blockchain knowledge, and you export them by going withdraw cards, and there's a drop down, and it goes Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, Polygon. We're about to add Solana and Hedera. You choose the chain, you cut and paste your wallet, press withdraw, it gives you the gas fee, you've got to pay for that, and off it goes. Now that, because you're choosing different chains, I suppose you do have to have some kind of blockchain knowledge, and also you must have a wallet to send it to. Why
shouldn't you? What I'm trying to say, if you have a bank account and you want to buy something, you don't have to choose which bank, just I want to buy it, that's it.
Yeah, but the reason being is OpenSea does not support some of the chains. So if you wanna send it to the big marketplaces, then you have to support the chain that marketplace does. But we are agnostic. So I don't want to force someone down a chain that might you might think is bad for the energy consumption and sustainability, or it's too expensive on gas fees. That's your choice. We don't lock you in that way, but that's only if you want to do that, right? It's a normal website, it's a marketplace that everyone's familiar with, eBay almost in the way that you use it, and I think you've got to do that. Don't confuse, put any friction up, and you've lost 90% of your audience. So just make it simple.
I mean, Orel, do you want to talk a bit more about what you guys are doing? Because obviously, you're really a games discovery platform. So
yeah,
are you? I mean, that's what I'm assuming you are. So why did you launch that business? What do you think? What sort of fundamental issue do you think you're solving for the industry there?
The idea that we are trying to accomplish is to open the closed garden economies that are currently happening in the gaming industry, Web 2, Web 3, whatever. Even a Web 3 game that allows you to trade tokens, it's still a closed garden economy. What OviO does is that we enable the user to play great games, discover the games that you love, and you don't even know if it's a Web 2 or Web 3 game. That's the whole idea. Until you choose to interact with the blockchain as you fit to, like trade your NFTs, exchange your tokens. And what we're trying to accomplish is that to drive those traditional gamers to interact with the blockchain and to do the transaction without even knowing that it's a blockchain. Because when you play games, you don't know if it's an Unreal Engine, if it's a Unity engine, if it's on the back end, on the front. You just want to play games. So we've managed to eliminate everything on the way and just allow our gamers to play great games and make it seamless for them.
And how do you make money?
Yes. Our conversion rate is around 70. I think it's 20 times higher than everybody else's.
But how do you make money?
Transaction fees on the blockchain itself, like every other exchange. It's what we've built is a non-custodial chain-agnostic wallet, which is a feature, not the essence. What we've built is a hybrid exchange, which is a feature and not the essence. The essence is some sort of a Netflix for games, a discovery platform for you as a player to interact with those games, complete missions, have fun. Web3 didn't invent play to earn. Play and get the reward is something that already been available for quite some time. And we are just trying to eliminate the whole process of the onboarding into the Web3 aspect. And the users just finally, you know what? I have an NFT, I have a token, I want to exchange them. I can do that without choosing the blockchain, without choosing like the technology on which I want to interact.
So you're effectively running wallets in the in their accounts on a sort of
I
back
don't
end?
run the wallet. No,
No,
you
no.
have your own non-custodial chain-agnostic wallet that you can watch. You have the address on.
But the users have to create that themselves.
Yeah, when you create a wallet on OviO, it's on the press of a button. You choose the 6-digit code or whatever you want to lock your wallet, and that's it. You can use your wallet on vast majority of games, mobile, PC. It doesn't have to be that complicated to interact with the blockchain. It could be simple, and I think we've managed to do so. And that's it.
Good. You have any questions? Go. Yeah, you could do that.
Come on, Greg.
No, I mean, if you have questions, we'll take them.
Yes. I don't want to talk about money. I want to talk about user interaction, engagement, because you can translate it later into money. On the Web 2 aspect, we've started 7 or 8 months ago with 3 games. And now we have 22. And the onboarding process, it's between 2 seconds if you use one of the MMPs providers, AppsFlyer Just. And the longest one, I think, took us 1 day with the blockchain game to interact the SDK, because they were so into, like MetaMask and the other chain. It took so much time, and the simplicity was just outstanding for them. They were like, that's it? Yeah, that's it.
So I would like to first argue a point and then follow up with a question. I'm not from the industry at all, but I see gaming in the near future to have a greater mission for human society overall, considering AI coming into the workspace. AI eventually will take a significant amount of jobs, and we need to keep the people involved into our society in one or another way. That's one aspect of gaming in the future, what I see. And from the other side, what I see is the conventional media and entertainment industry is decreasing and moving into gaming based on the upbringing of my generation probably, and Gen Z is living on another planet even for me already. Therefore, I think the purpose of creating just a game and a good game and that's it is maybe good for now, but in 10 years, the mission will be to involve people into society and communication. And mainly, where I'm leading my question to is the in-game earnings, which I believe is going to be play a significant role for society. We've seen something similar in the movie. I think it's Player One. It is a great movie, but
this is how I see the metaverse, like Ready Player One.
Metaverse or gaming in one or another way, we need to involve society, or maybe even not because of AI. We can just speak of continents like Africa, where I particularly work in, that need this is the youngest continent on the planet. They are the ones that can engage in gaming. They need opportunities that are not giving to them. So you need to kind of involve them into this industry. How do you see, now I'm coming to my question, how do you see developing such infrastructure given that those NFTs or tokenizations are in a very small and closed environment? And how do you think this could be more broadened in order to bring in not 100 million people, but let's say 3 billion people that can have a real life and a gaming life, and maybe make their living based on the gaming life?
Do you wish? First of all, the Africa continent, I think, is one of the leading places for Web3 games. I had the chance and the privilege to discuss with a few individuals from Africa that runs highly quality communities. The social aspect of gaming I think it's called community. It comes from bottom up, and because the living cost in Africa is a bit it's cheaper than the rest of the world. So I think they can use the gaming as a way to earn extra money, as a way to educate the kids, to like incentivize them to reach certain levels, certain skills within the educational aspect, and use the gaming as a way to get higher engagement with the students. I think it was around the 70s when the first test of paying students with tokens actually created higher grades with those students, because whenever they reached a class or reached a certain skill within that class, they received a token, a piece of paper. On the 70s, it was a piece of paper. So I think you can do the same way in Africa, in any other regions that that maybe the cost of living is cheaper than the rest of the world. You can monetize that better in Africa. If that what you were asking, I think.
Anyone else got any views on Africa? Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think there's sort of maybe you have two separate questions. I think the AI one is interesting because I guess that's probably maybe more going to impact the developed world. I mean, I guess the interesting thing is everyone's like, well, AI for the games industry is like, well, maybe you don't need so many coders and artists. I mean, which are very high paid, very high skilled jobs. So I guess the interesting bit with AI maybe is more into the sort of the developed world. The thing, the blockchain and earning, I guess we got a taste of that with Axie Infinity, and I guess I think that maybe one of the problems. I mean, I'm not absolutely no expert, but sort of have an intellectual interest in sort of how that may impact something like Africa, as you framed the question. I think the problem Africa's obviously a continent with how many, is it 40 different countries, and each of them have their own specific sort of problems. So we have to be a little bit careful not to sort of have a sort of blanket view of what Africa is. And places obviously Nigeria are very heavily into crypto already. So there are aspects where it's already happening. I just kind of think in terms of the gaming side, it just doesn't. There are parts of Africa that are just too underdeveloped. That sort of gaming is not is going to be difficult to take. So some of the poorest people who sort of gaming could help with, they're just not at a technological level, even on whatever mobile devices they've got. It's going to be very hard to do that. So actually, when I talk to blockchain game developers, when they're looking at developing countries, they're looking much more either in Latin America. So Brazil is probably, I'd say, the key market as being a sort of a mid-range country with very big population, one single language, sort of quite good culture, and so there's quite a lot of stuff going on around Brazil. And then obviously you have the sort of the Philippines, Southeast Asia. Obviously, I don't know if you were here for the talk. There's quite a lot going on in India now. So there's a big guild called Indie GG. So those are sort of I think we are starting to see these sort of people in those countries being able to earn some sort of revenue. But I think probably one of the things we got wrong with Axie was the headlines were people in the Philippines are earning double the minimum wage playing this game. I mean, that's sort of what drove the whole thing. And obviously, if you look at the data, for about 2 weeks, some of them were. But then after 2 weeks, sort of none of them were. So I think maybe we want to get out of our heads the fact that people may be earning $2 or $3 a day, a week maybe. And for most of us, that's meaningless. But for some people, even that as incremental revenue is maybe not meaningful, but sort of getting to that sort of level. So I think it's quite difficult because obviously if you try and onboard 1 billion people into a blockchain game, there's no economy is going to allow people to extract $1 a day. It's absolutely not at that scale. But I think maybe in 20 years' time, you do sort of have that sort of situation where if you have a very big sort of game with a very deep, trillions of dollars of liquidity into that very deep sort of gamer roles as people are doing different things. possibly that can happen. I do think sort of blockchain in general does play into this idea of universal basic income. I mean, this is going way off over here somewhere, but if you're going to do that, you're not going to do that through bank accounts. You're going to do that through computer systems. So I think gaming does have something to play in that. But I think my view would be we've got a lot of things to sort out before we get too deep into those sort of equations. It is a good point to think about. Okay, I think should we wrap up? Just to finish off, so we have one last thing to say each. Halfway through the year, anything we are interested in or anything we want to highlight for the next 6 months? It could be a game, could be a law case, I don't know, it could just be whatever. Any predictions, anything to look out for this year?
Does anyone know why crypto markets are up 20% today? I mean, why? All we see is bad news, bad news. No one knows.
It's because of the GameExpo here. It's been so successgood.
I mean, Bitcoin's...
No, but this is one of the problems we have with crypto is because it's on the prices are on 24/7. Something goes up or goes down, and we will have to have a reason why. So everyone will create a reason. Oh, it's because BlackRock are doing this this ETF. I mean, because it happened on the same day as the price.
Oh, is that what?
No, but that's what people are saying.
I don't want to say that crypto is dead, but there's a phrase in the capital markets which even a dead cat bounce. It happens. You don't have to find that specific reason because you should look at the bigger trend. Currently, it's a downtrend. But there's blood on the streets, and I think it's time to start buying the good things and develop good things and not be scared.
No, I was just interested if anyone... because, knowing what's going to happen in the future, after what's just happened with the SEC and Coinbase and everything is bad news, bad news, bad news, and then suddenly it jumps 20%. And you're going to go, how did that happen? Right?
You don't want to buy when everybody else is buying. You want to buy when everybody else is selling, because then you would sell.
No,
and this is why the SEC are looking at it, because that's an investment attitude.
Right, yes. Yeah.
So.